Gives me great pleasure to introduce Pavel Pevsner, who probably doesn't need any introduction here. He's one of the founders of the Recom series with Soren and Mike, and really one of the seminal contributors to everything sequencing that people work on today. So let me just step aside and let Pavel tell you what he wants to talk about.
Thank you, Russell, and happy birthday, Soren. I apologize for not being able to join you and esteemed guests in person today, but if I were there, I'd definitely sit next to you, especially at the conference dinner. Let me explain why. Back in 1995, when Soren, Mike, and I started talking about a new conference, the term bioinformatics was still new, and computational biologists didn't have a conference to call their own. Soren and Mike didn't really care where this conference would happen, but I was a skiing fanatic at that time, and I insisted that Recom should take place near a ski resort. That is one of the reasons why the first Recom took place in Santa Fe. The third Recom took place in Lyon, where I hit the slopes in the Alps. But as thrilling as skiing in the Alps was, my most cherished memory of this Recom was the dinner at a renowned Michelin star restaurant. It was held in a palace with a waiter behind each guest. And this was where I discovered the true benefits of sitting next to Soren at a dinner. Shortly after the first dish was served, Soren casually asks the waiter if they have some potatoes in the You see, Soren's culinary preferences are quite basic. He enjoys simple Romanian potato dishes. I thought the waiter will consider it an insult and show us to the door, but he didn't even flinch. It's Michelin-style training. Within minutes, Soren had a plate of boiled potatoes in front of him. And that, when the true benefits of friendship and sitting next to Soren truly materialized. Thanks to his simple tastes, I might have been the first person in this restaurant to ever get a double portion of Michelin star food. Because Soren refused to eat his course and ate potato instead. Fast forward to the next year Recom in Tokyo, where I found myself once again sitting next to Soren at the traditional 10-course kaiseki dinner. It was a serious multi-course affair. Most people in Japan had never tried a traditional kaiseki dinner. Soren, always up for culinary adventure, attempted the same potato trick. Well, it did not work in Japan. The vendor just smiled politely, just another weird joke by a crazy American. I suspect Soren might have been the only person in the world who got hungry after a kaiseki dinner. Yet, sitting next to Soren, I got to enjoy a double portion, make it a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Those were the days, Soren. Inspired by that dinner, I want to conclude with a simple haiku. Kaiseki dinner de kueo tachi, ichire wa manpuki, monitori wa nanaka gasuit imasu. And the translation is, all friends at kaiseki dinner, one is full, the other is hungry. Thank you, Soren, for all delicious memory and for always keeping us entertained with your culinary adventure. And here's to a memorable moment in the future. And may your love for potatoes never wane. Oh, I forgot. You asked us to present an open problem, right? So let me share the screen. And here's a photograph from Tokyo. I believe right before we had this Kazaki dinner, and my talk will be on the recently emerged problem of sequence alignment. Now, Soren, you asked for new open problem, but roughly at the same time we were talking about recomp, Mike and I published a paper with 56 open problems. Most of them remain unsolved, so I could simply bring one of these unsolved problems to your conference. But of course, I know that you want a problem from one of your heroes. And I try to come up with something that is similar to the famous Solon's problem. What is the length of the longest increasing subsequence in a random permutation? And of course, this problem is alignment, and it resulted in very deep, hundreds of deep mathematical results related to bioinformatics and not related to bioinformatics. Now, some of us, I myself recently considered alignment-based sequence comparison as a solved problem. But as Poincaré said, there are no solved problems. There are only problems that are more or less solved. And over 20 years ago, you participated in sequencing of the human genome. But of course, this sequence had thousands of gaps. And some of these gaps were in very complex and biomedically important regions. 20 years forward, the entire human genome was finally sequenced. Well, but it is just the beginning. After genome is sequenced, different genomes have to be compared, and it turned out this genome scale alignment problem is a challenge. The first person who compared two human genome assembly was Soren back in 2004. So it looks like we have already a solution for these hundreds of new complete telomere to telomere genome, but it turned out it is not the case. And the reason it is not the case, and we need no new algorithm, is because these extremely complex regions defy all existing algorithms for sequence alignment when we try to compare them. One example is centromere, which is evolutionary enigma and still unexplored area for analyzing genetic diseases. Another, one of the most biomedically important regions in the human genome, immunoglobulin loci, we still do not know how to compare them. And another thing about centromere, they're fascinating. Since there is no recombination, your maternal and parental centromere on chromosome 1 may be very similar because they had a common ancestor, let's say a couple of hundred years ago. Your centromere on chromosome 2 may be extremely different because their common ancestor lived tens of thousands of years ago. And that makes their comparison very difficult. And that's why the first paper from the Human Pangenome Consortium basically stated new alignment methods may need to be developed to fully understand and characterize this component of the human genome, and existing alignment methods, as beautiful as they are, fail for any choice of parameters. So we started to address this problem with my student Andrei Bzikadze this year. And as an example, if you look at, let's say, two first complete centromere on chromosome X from two individuals, it looks like there is kind of nearly perfect alignment of them. This perfect alignment has nothing to do with reality. The alignment, in fact, reveals very complex evolutionary history, and traditional alignment and correct alignment actually have no points in common in this alignment grid. So something new needs to be done. And so why alignment methods do not work in this area? Let's say if you construct a dot plot of all 100 meres in centromeres, then it will not reveal any similarity. Why? Because most 100 meres from human centromere occur over 1,000 times. So there is no useful information in this dot plot. What we notice is that instead of comparing all k-meres, we need to compare only unique k-mers. And if we compare unique k-mers, the similarity between these two centromeres suddenly revealed. What we later realized that fixing the size k would not work, and instead we should look for unique substrings that are shared by two genomes, and then we are able to construct alignments that reflects evolutionary history. So given string as a T, a substring of them is unique if it appears exactly once in each of them. And these are the very valuable elements of true similarity between strings. Some unique substrings may be short, some may be long. We need to combine them somehow. A uni-alignment is simply an alignment using unique substring as the atomic units for scoring. We don't use anything else. And immediately, two questions arise. Are uni-alignments more biologically adequate than standard alignments? First question. And second question, can we efficiently find unique substrings? Efficiently means very fast. Or the subset called unisets, so that the uni-alignment is faster and more accurate than even the fastest implementation of alignment algorithm, and even Minimap. So these two questions are not questions that I wanted to formulate for you, Soren, because they were solved this year. The answer to both of these questions is yes. You can design more adequate, more evolutionary adequate algorithm for comparing highly repetitive regions, and even whatever regions, even regions without repeat in the human genome, if they are not too diverged, that works, that is more accurate than alignments, traditional alignment, and it is blazingly fast. Why it is blazingly fast? Because it's combined combinatorial pattern matching, two key ideas from combinatorial pattern matching, longest common prefix array and sparse dynamic programming. Both, since both run in nearly linear time, the result, and since the number of unisets is small, the resulting uni-alignment algorithm is blazingly fast. Now, back to Ulam's problem. So Ulam's, back to Ulam's problem, how the problem of uni-alignment is related to the Ulam problem. I mentioned that some centromeres or whatever highly repetitive region in human genome are quite similar. Others are extremely different. These differences are not really apparent. They only become apparent when you apply uni-alignment and look at unique substrate. So this is centromere 12. We suspect that the common ancestor of this centromeres lives tens of thousands of years ago, some of the most diverse centromeres. Basically, the alignment mainly consists of insertion and duplication rather than matches. And the question arises, when alignment is very diverse, it becomes statistically insignificant. And when uni-alignment is that diverse, it's probably statistically insignificant. How we define this gray zone where uni-alignment becomes statistically insignificant? Now we come to very deep mathematics. If we consider random dot plot and point randomly uniformly distributed at random in the unit square, and define A of n as the scorer of the optimal northeast alignment path with maximum number of dots, then we can, if we learn the distribution of this random variable, then we can say something about the scorer of uni-alignment. If a uni-alignment scorer does not significantly exceed expectation of AN, it indicates that unisets are randomly distributed in the alignment grid, and the uni-alignment is statistically insignificant. Thus, to get a key for evaluating statistical significance of uni-alignment, we need to get a key on the distribution of AN. And this problem was brilliantly solved actually quite some time ago, because the random variable AN is closely related to the solution of the Ulam problem. And Ulam problem was solved by Logan, Schaap, Vershik, Karov theorem, and who proved that the length of longest increasing subsequence grows as 2 square root of n. Now, with this at hand, they actually design a rough empirical estimate of the statistical significance of a uni alignment. It's now a recent paper published this year. But this is a poor man's solution to a complicated probabilistic problem. So the Olam-like problem for uni alignment, what is the score of the uni alignment between two random segments? What is the expectation of the scorer? And this problem, of course, is unsolved, and I suspect it will take a lot of time to solve it. So I think I'm running out of time, and in the spirit of this open problem, I want to conclude with this photograph. Soren, this is the granddaughter, as you know, of Stanislav Ulam, whom you brought to the first RECOM conference in Santa Fe almost quarter a century ago. And happy birthday again.
Do we have any questions for Pavel? I see we've got one question.
Hi, Pavel. That was outstanding. This is Andy Clark. Good to see
hi.
Good to see you again. So you presented the uni alignment as though you had a haploid genome, and I'm wondering what about the sort of phasing of the haplotypes for a diploid individual?
Phasing haplotype if in a diploid individuals in centromere
Yes.
is difficult, but probably not that much difficult that phasing of the rest of the genome, because there are centromeres is arguably probably the most rapidly evolving region of the human genome. There are a lot of mutations that allows us to separate the haplotypes. So it has been already done for many genomes in the Human Pangenome Consortium, subject to validations, of course, because it's currently ongoing effort.
Right. Thank you.
Hey, I don't see any other questions, so thank you again, Pavel.